we have Bernard and Denise Coley here to talk to us about reaching underengaged in culturally sensitive manner. Thank you for coming today. Now, what I really do like about this couple is the first time I met them, well, I shouldn't say the first time, but Denise had said to me that she's like, when she was diagnosed, she said, we have Parkinson's. And I really liked that because they were in this together. So Denise is the founder of Enable Your Vision, a firm that provides supplier diversity consulting to drive economic vitality for their diverse businesses, corporations, and the communities in which they reside. Denise is also a Parkinson's advocate, focusing on increasing Parkinson's awareness and resources to underengaged and remote global communities. She served on multiple PD committees, including the Parkinson's Foundation's People with Parkinson's Advisory Council, and as the Mission and Outreach Chair of the Parkinson's Foundation, California Regional Council. Denise also serves on the World Parkinson Coalition's Engaging People with Parkinson's in Clinical Research Committee and is a member of the PD Avengers Wellness Committee. Together with her husband, they co-chair a special interest group focused on bringing Black perspectives to PD research. So you can see they're very busy. And now her husband, Bernard, is an executive with 50 plus years of experience in the high technology industry. He received an AB in Applied Mathematics from Harvard University, an MBA from Stanford Business School, and a Doctor of Law from Stanford University Law School. So he could actually juggle his degrees if he wanted. Mr. Coley has a long and distinguished career of volunteer work, including community development projects supporting the arts, youth development, business leadership development, and facilitating and mentoring entrepreneurial development in underserved and indigenous communities. He's also an experienced facilitator and mediator. Currently, he is a member of the Parkinson's Foundation's Research Advocates and an advisory board member of the California chapter of the Parkinson's Foundation. Welcome. Thank you so much. And yes, this is being recorded because we want everyone to be able to see this.
Well, thank you, Eden, and thank you for having us. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk about a subject which is near and dear to our heart. And I want to take 1 second, though, and globalize this. Although we're going to give you an example of reaching the Black community as a community of color, many of the principles and things that we talk about are applicable across your efforts to reach any underengaged community. So we'll be giving you examples, but again, we're going to try to talk about this more globally. So feel free to add your questions specific to any of the engagement challenges that you're having, and we'll be happy to chime in on those. So first, though, before we get too far into this, we like to make sure our sessions are very interactive and engaging, and we don't spend too much time talking at you. We spend more time listening and working with you. So we want to get a feel for who's in the room. So Kelly, if you take a second and bring up the poll, we'd like to know who's here. So if you would, good, great. Oh, wow.
Come on, let's get more participation.
Come on. Yeah, the numbers aren't adding up yet to everybody in the room. Interesting, interesting. Okay, we have a few more. We have about 5 more people in it. We'll give you 1 more minute, please.
Some of us can't answer because, like, as a co-host, I can't answer this. So I'm one of those people in the 5.
So, okay, we'll go ahead and begin from here. So interestingly, you will notice that we have a large group of representatives who are people with Parkinson's or their care partners that are leading support groups, and I'm really excited that that's in the room. We also have another large group from foundations and agency staffs that are leading support group, and a few social workers. I'll be interested in some of your questions as you get out there. And then happily, something that we talk about when we speak to the support groups leaders is that a lot of support groups actually come from activities that weren't set up to be support groups, but you soon find that they're your support group, like Rocksteady Boxing or your Tai Chi class or your dance class. They become your support group, and we have a significant number of representatives from that group as well. So welcome. We're excited to have you, looking forward to your questions as we get into the program. So next we're going to move on, and what we're going to ask you to do is I'm going to turn this over to Denise, and she's going to sort of frame the rest of our presentation and the program. Oh, I'll just skip this.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. So one of the things that we looked at is looking at our support group and looking at it from the eyes of key attributes, benefits, and less challenges. So for a moment, I'd like everyone just to temporarily suspend the group that you represent right now and who you are, and imagine that you are a person with Parkinson's from one of these under-engaged communities that are trying to reach. Think about it. What would be the key attributes that you're looking for in a support group? And first, I'll talk about from my experience. From my experience, I'd be looking for the following. I'm looking for people that I can trust. Trust is very big for me. Are they open to other people's thoughts or responses? I would also look to see, are they exchanging stories that reflect me and want to hear my story as well as their own? I have been in some support groups that at the beginning of every meeting, the facilitator, if on Zoom, would go across all the squares and ask everybody for updates, what they're doing, their stories, or if they're in an in-person room, to go around in a meeting. This way, everyone gets to know each other and feel comfortable with each other. The third thing that I do is I look, does anyone have anything in common with me? Are they the same gender, the same culture? Do they have the same PD story? Can they really look at my day-to-day realities? Do they understand where I'm coming from? Perhaps I had transportation issues, parking issues. I might have location issues, time if I'm working, or time when my minutes are on or off, and where are we going to go for food if it's a lunch meeting? Are people truly listening to each other, or are they only listening to one or two people or listening to themselves? Think about it. Those are really key attributes that are really important to any individual, no matter what group, but we're thinking of it as a person from an underengaged community. So what are the benefits? Can I meet and make connections? Connections are a really good way to build trust. So am I making new friends? Do I see welcoming body language? Did they give me a smile? Did they give me an eye contact? Did they give me a handshake? Did anybody, when I come in, recognize that I was new and said, hello, I am so-and-so, just so that I felt comfortable in the group? It's really important to me, if speakers are in the meetings, and there's going to be speakers every meeting, do they engage all members, not one or two people, or not point out people who are not talking and saying, hey, what is your opinion? Does everyone have a voice? And lastly, the area of challenges. There are always challenges in getting support groups because we all have different needs. Some of them didn't meet my needs. I didn't feel included. There was no outward invitation of next steps or a welcome to come back again. No one checked on me in some of the meetings I went to, and no one openly tried to engage me during the meeting, whether or not it was through body language or physically coming up. I realized not all support groups are for everyone, as stated on the last bullet. So don't get discouraged. there might be another group that is a better fit for the individual. There are many different kinds of support groups. As we did our research and talked to people, they mentioned several different categories. Educational series with speakers, a support group that's let them share what is going on in their life, or a women's group, or a men's group, or a care partner group, or a multicultural group, or a group that provides hope and encouragement. I attended a PD conference about 2 years ago, and there was a female on the stage who had Parkinson's, and she also was a speaker. And she said, for every woman that's in this audience, I want you to go and find a women's support group. You'll find it'll make all the difference in your life. Well, when I did find 2 women's support groups, I did find a difference, because sometimes there are those little things that you may not want to do in a mixed group. So that was the best advice that I could give. So when you look at the support group, if you find someone who doesn't come back, it probably didn't meet their needs, but if you give them the list of other opportunities and other support groups that are out there, and there's so many that are now by teleconference, WebEx, Zoom, Skype, you'll surely have a big impact on their life.
Thank you. So I'm going to amplify some of the points that Denise raised. And you might be asking yourself right now, okay, I just thought about this for a few minutes. What does this have to do about reaching underengaged communities? And what I like to tell people is it has everything to do with reaching underengaged communities. First off, this isn't as difficult as some people perceive it to be. It is actually, a lot of it is just very practical, everyday things. So let me begin with this example. If you're sort of looking out for, you're trying to reach the community that you'd like to see in your support group, but you haven't been able to draw them in. And I want to first start with this by saying it's not, again, this is not just ethnics. This could be anything. This could be an urban support group trying to reach out and say, we don't get enough, members of our rural community or our suburban community in here. Nobody comes in. Well, it turns out that a lot of times the reason is very simple. It's just pragmatic and practical. The same thing you would say. So imagine this. I come up and I bang on your door and I knock. And when you open the door, I said, hello, my name is Bernard Coley and I have a support group and I've got all the answers for your PD problem. Well, if you don't slam the door in my face, if I get a few more seconds, I might get the chance to ask you the next most important thing, which is, by the way, who are you and what do you need? And what would you like? And those are the things Denise was just talking about when she said, what's important? What would you want in a support group? So I asked you to reflect on this after the presentation. And this will be up online, so you'll be able to look at the slide and ask yourself whether your presentation of your support group looks like the kind of thing you want to be part of. You're leading it, yes, but does it look like something you might have jumped into right at the beginning? So I'll start with this point next. The next point I'll make is, the approach is important. Representation matters. And it's one of the most important things, because what we like to emphasize to groups and to any group, we do a lot of work with research, around research and getting more diversity involved in clinical research. And at the end of the day, same for here, one of the biggest issues is trust. Gaining trust. Gaining the community's trust, if you expect that. So where I'll start with is sort of how do you get that? And I'll begin with this point. Representation matters. And you remember me knocking at your door? You open the door. If I don't look like you, I don't sound like you, I don't dress like you, well, there's not going to be a lot of trust established right at the beginning of our relationship. Connection matters. I used to tell people, and I still do with my teams, is connection before content. How many of you, and you don't have to raise your hand now, how many of you went out and told people about your support group before you knew anything about the person you were talking to other than maybe their name? You went right into all the wonderful things your support group does and all the things you care about, what's important and what you've done, and a whole lot of content, no connection. What I'm going to share with you then is maybe you have an outside chance that they might hear something in there that they respond to, but it's very likely that they're not, because there's no connection, there's no trust. So one of the ways we deal with the trust issue is around the topic of representation matters. So I am going to, so you're looking at the cover of one of the tools that we have used to reach the Afro-American community as a community of color. And it's this book called PD Movers. And I want you to just look at the cover, because what I want you to see is, and I usually, by the way, so here's the whole book, you know, and it's about 63 pages long. It's amazing. It tells you all about PD, but it tells you all about it through the stories of the people that you see here on the cover. And I tell people, I don't have to even get into the story, just look at the cover. What do you see? Well, most people tell us they see hope. A lot of people tell us they see themselves. Now notice, we haven't talked about PD yet, but they see themselves. There are themes in here that people see right away. There's faith, which is big in the Black community. There is family relationships that are a big deal. There's daughters. There's a daughter taking care of her mom. There's a husband and wife in a big celebration. A lot of things we do are around celebrations. There is working out, exercise. One gentleman, he's so proud of his military career. That's a big deal in the Black community. We've served our country, but we don't always get the recognition. So why do I point those things out? It's because one of the ways to reach underengaged community is about messaging and signaling them in a manner that's culturally sensitive to them. Not to you, but to them. So, oh, Bernard, wait a minute. How am I supposed to know all that? Now we get to the meat of the matter, being realistic about how to reach these communities. This book was 2 years in the making. Why? Because it took us 2 years to convince everybody in here to share their stories, to open up, to convince them of the value, to convince them of what was important, how we would use this, and how they would improve the PD community at large. So the second thing I'm going to tell you is make sure you set realistic time frames for trying to engage communities. We often tell people, if I told you that to get a significant diversity in your support group, it's going to take 1 year to 2 years, would you stop? And they'll say, oh, no, we really want to do this. But then when they get down to the work, they don't put 2 years into it. So for example, you can't, I mentioned you can't just go in and start with your content. This is how great we are. This is what we do. This is where we meet. You have to go in and you have to become part of the environment. You have to go attend events, activities, and things in those communities, because the community is not going to trust you until you've been around for a while. Okay? That's a part of representation matters. It's not just putting up pictures of the community you want to go to, but you have to invest in going there and being part of those communities. And then Denise mentioned it often in her, what she's looking for in a support group, a group of people who will listen, right? So all of you, many of you, a third of us in this room are people with Parkinson's running support groups. I'm going to take a wild guess that some of you put together your support group because the support groups you saw weren't listening to you. They weren't what you expected. So you said, well, we'll make our own. Many of the groups, support groups that come out of quasi support groups, they came about because other support groups weren't meeting their need and they were getting together for fitness and they did all thinking they were together all the time. Before long, they realized they were a support group. But it's because they connected. They were there. They were present. I used to tell people month after month, year after year, and eventually you get there. So part of reaching underengaged community is your being present, it comes to the punchline, where they are. Okay. If you invite them to your support group, that's great. Some may come because they're curious. They may look in one site, but don't get upset if they don't come back. And it's because you're not where they are. You're asking them to come to where you are. So it's a hard slog to get people to join you if you're not willing to join them, if you're not willing to be present. The joke I always tell is you must be present to win. That goes with here, reaching the underengaged community. So when you're trying to reach the communities in a culturally sensitive way, this word chart should have things jump out at you right away. Are you perceived as supportive? Are you perceived as caring, collaborative? There's that big trust word. Look at the things that jump out. Communication, welcoming. What I tell people often is, don't tell me what you think you are. Tell me what the people around you tell you you are. And if these words are popping up, you're doing a good job and along the way to reaching people in a culturally sensitive way. If the group you want to engage is not at this point yet, you have a hard slot. The goal is to get them to be saying these words about you and the environment that you represent. So again, being culturally sensitive means you have to invest some time in understanding the group of people you're trying to reach. Many of them share things in common. I can tell you there are a lot of people running great support groups in terms of the fact that they put on good programming, but they wonder why they have such high turnover over the years. And the answer is because there's a phase all of us go through where programming is important, education is important, but then there's all these other things that are just as important. The environment, the people around us, the new community we find. Many of us join support groups to find a new community. So we want to be in a community that embodies these things. And so to reach communities which may not currently be in part of yours or to grow your membership, these are the important issues. Becoming this to those communities. And it starts by you going out where they are, listening, then building up communication, building up connection, and then your content. So you can't do that 100% of the time, all your life, or you never keep your support group growing, but maybe it's 20% of your time in leading a support group should be spent in outreach. And outreach not in you sending out mailers or announcements or whatever, but outreach in terms of going where people are, going where they're congregating. Because there's something about where they're congregating that they've got the things they need. And your job is to understand what those things are. So, because we want to get to the questioning, I'm going to move on quickly. All right. Denise is going to talk, I'm going to first talk about this chart. So when you're going out to engage, to reach underengaged communities, first off, you're not likely to succeed if you're just trying to do it by yourself. The process which tends to work more often than not is when you recognize that this is a three-body problem or three-body challenge. So there's you, the support group leader, but there are two other pieces. You recognize the underengaged community you want to reach, But the missing piece is probably that you haven't gone out and found the community leaders in that community. You haven't gone and found and built a relationship with the trusted individuals, the influencers, the people who are the recommenders, who will get people into your support group. So what this chart quickly summarizes is what's going on between the three bodies. You provide hosting and an invitation to your support group, to the underengaged community. But the knowledge you need about reaching them, building programs, building the things that are important to them, comes from talking to the trusted leaders who've already earned it. They have the credibility. They know what they want. They're there. Often you hear people talking about reaching the Black community by saying, "Oh, go talk to the minister." I have to tell them that, well, you only got part of the picture. There's the community center. There's the senior center. There's a lot of places. But the key is to find the trusted leaders and develop a relationship with them. Because what goes on between the community itself and the leaders is closing the credibility gap, building the trust, getting the influence. So if you're trying to reach the community, you need to be thinking about it from this perspective. All right, Denise is going to talk a little bit quickly about modeling, being culturally sensitive, and trust building.
So I'd like to start off by saying the first step is connect. But what is connect? Connect means you go where a person is, and then you make sure that you are engaging them to be empathetic and welcoming. So a smile, a handshake, and what we're recommending, use those body language things first so people know that you're listening fully. Because when you listen fully, as we say in some of the classes that we run, you use your eyes, ears, and your face and your body. So you meet with the trusted community leaders, and they're going to help you engage with the community. But until you make that connection and you are meeting with somebody who's trusted, you're the unknown source right now. You might be a resource. So you have to understand what the challenges are for that respective community. And each time you go to another community, it might be a different set of people and a different set of actions. So when you look at understanding the culture, have you taken the time to listen? Have you taken the time to learn? Have you really made sure that you're watching the body language and that you're making a good understanding with the trusted leaders and community? And it takes time to engage. There will be challenges. And when you take this, you take a risk. The last slide said take a risk. When you're meeting somebody where they are and you're listening and learning and you're respecting their needs, you might hear some things that make you a little bit uncomfortable. Well, if you're getting information that's uncomfortable, that means they're truly sharing. But if nobody says anything, that means you really missed the boat completely. So you have to remember that it takes patience, it takes trust, and time. There was one organization that we went to for 13 straight years because the culture is one about embracing family, eating together, getting to know each other, and trust. And that took a good period of time. It's not going to take 13 years for the support group leaders, but it might take longer than you expect. So if you're getting that hard information, but they're telling you the truth of what they need, listen, learn, and then take the next steps that are available. But do it in conjunction with the trusted partners and leaders in the community. Some people will say that people have come here before and they came back only one time. We didn't take them seriously. There was no trust that was given. So if you keep on working with the trusted leaders and the partners and community leaders, it makes it much easier. There's a message in there. Okay.
All right. So let me tell you a quick little story. So we were working with one support group leader who was struggling to build up her support group. And we set in on a session, and about 15 minutes into the session, and she was very worried, by the way, with us setting in, because she was afraid that it might mess up the dynamic of the support group. Well, we were in there about 15 minutes, and within 15 minutes, the group was talking and sharing, and she learned something that she didn't know. So she intended to build a male PD, a Black male PD support group, because she clearly noticed in her practice that Black males were not participating in the support group, but it was a heavy need. So she kept telling some to go to this support group or go to that support group, whatever. So in that few minutes when we got them talking, guess what we found out? Well, we found out, and this goes not just for Black males, but many males in minority communities. The number one reason they weren't participating, and this goes across research things, support groups, attendance at some of the webinars and events, was that they were afraid to let people know that they had Parkinson's because they were afraid of losing their job. So it didn't matter how nice your support group looked, how many things you've done successfully. If we hadn't listened and learned what the actual barrier was, we would not have been able to address it. So remember that. So it wasn't, people had all kinds of ideas about what was wrong, why they weren't going. They don't care. They're just, they're apathetic. I was like, no, they didn't want to lose their job, because the real problem is that their employers don't understand Parkinson's and don't understand that people can work and live well with Parkinson's 20, 30 years. So the mere hearing that they have Parkinson's, they're concerned that that's it. And they can't afford to lose their job. And that's not something, I would have thought of as a support group leader. That's why we're sharing this with you. And I'm sure you haven't. But I'm sure if you talk to groups, once they're in a trusted framework and they're willing to share, you may learn some surprising things in your support group that would have to be adjusted or addressed in order to grow your support group and to reach some of the underengaged. They may have issues that are just you didn't understand were issues in the community. For example, we went to our Partners in Research training back in 2019. And for us, it was an eye-opening experience because we were in the room with professionals and they all had Parkinson's. And they all had Parkinson's for a long time. And we were like, wow. Well, my wife was absolutely convinced when she got her diagnosis, it was the immediate death sentence. So we had spent our first months following the diagnosis trying to encourage her to understand it wasn't a death sentence. But you can imagine if you're trying to outreach, for example, to young onset Parkinson's patients with your support group, and their real issue is, does anybody understand that I'm going to lose my job? Or do they understand that I'm worried about caring for my children, which is one that we get from a women's support group. Nobody there wants to talk about caring for the children. So they want to be in a support group where people understand that that's their priority, their family priority. They want to be able to talk about those issues. So reaching out to these underengaged community means really going over and understanding what their issues are and not assuming, for example, that just putting on a good speaker is sufficient to bring a lot of people in. If you're talking about the kinds of issues or creating any kind of environment that they're going to feel comfortable and trusting in, you'll win. But if not, hopefully now you will go learn about the environments you're trying to reach and understand what is it that's really driving them, that's motivating them, that's challenging them, etc. So we're going to conclude our presentation here. Thank you for listening to us. and open the floor to start answering your questions. And what we really want you to do is tell us about your practical experience, things that you have experienced trying to outreach to communities, and talk to us about, you know, what we might be able to address or advise you on, and what would be helpful. So thank you.
I'm going to encourage people to start coming off of mute because I know Denise and Bernard would like a discussion. We actually, before I had met with them, we actually did talk a lot. Well, I should say not before I met them. Before this meeting, we had talked a lot. And one of the things, you know, with the different slides, we kind of went through slide by slide, and he would ask me like, well, what are you seeing? And I know one thing with that first, not the first slide, but the slide with the meat where he starts was, what does your group look like?
Yeah.
And when somebody comes in, what are they seeing? Are they being welcomed? Do they see anyone who looks like them? Does this group seem inclusive and warm? And, you know, I would say, like in his last example, confidential. You know, like if somebody's here, are they going to be worried that they might be talked about? And so people want to come off mute and kind of talk about, you know, your group. And, you know, because when I really thought about groups that I've started, it's always been because there was a need. And as a social worker, it was like, well, hey, can you lead this group? And I went, sure, I can do that. But, you know, it was a young onset group, or it was geographically, well, we'd like a group in South Tampa versus Northwest Tampa. And I never really put a lot of thought into it. I just went, well, here's my need. And I kind of rested on my laurels in a way that I just sort of went, you know, would put things into support, you know, the doctor's office that I worked. I would give out this information to pharmaceutical reps to give out to other organizations. And it really was just who would show up. Yes, Teresa.
Hi. A couple of comments. One is that I participate in a Dance for PD program, not as a leader, but as a participant. What I perceive, the reason that I'm the only African-American that participates, it seems that the music is not culturally relevant. So, and I know the Black community identifies a lot with its music, you know. So I was wondering how a Dance for PD program could expand their program to include more culturally relevant music, or is that something that necessarily needs to be separate?
No, I think well, go ahead. I'll let you.
All right. So Teresa, you might mention to the instructor that might be something they might want to include. There are several types of dance classes. There's dance for PD, there are salsa dances, there are tango classes and things of that sort. So if you go on the web, you can find a variety, but this might be closer to your home. So it'd be worthwhile just to have a conversation with the instructor to see if they'll include other music from different cultures.
Okay, because they've, you know, I feel comfortable there. They have asked me to help them reach out. And I'm not sure, you know, if their program needs to be changed or if it's, you know, I know their program is world renowned. So I'm not saying to change it in that way, but to be more inclusive. I've even thought about calling a dance session jamming for PD instead of dance for PD. I think it would be more culturally relevant. You know, at least that's my thought.
I can tell you, I'd show up for jam for PD and wouldn't show up for dance for PD.
Yeah.
But you, Teresa, you hit on a very excellent point. How easy it is to miss the cultural sensitivity part of it. We'll share with you, one of our Hispanic colleagues talked about a program that developed out of the church. And it was not planned initially as a support group. What happened was it started around just health in general. and they would have food, which is a requirement in many communities of color, food, and the music. And they played, various Hispanic music, mostly Chicano, mostly Mexican.
Okay.
And they filled up. And then it turned out that they figured out, well, we got all the people in the room now, we can talk to them about all the health things. And they did. And then the group got large enough that it splintered into certain health groups. And so they sort of evolved into this. But the key was they began with the culturally relevant issues first. So I think you make a great point. And I want to basically highlight what Eden said, because I think it's really important. So what I used to do when I'm a management consultant too, I used to take the CEO and his senior staff out to lunch. And then as we returned to the office, I said, now everybody get behind me. We're going to walk off the elevator. Don't say a word. So we walk off the elevator and I say, stop. Now, one at a time, tell me what you see. And they were shocked because they never looked at themselves coming off the elevator before to see what they see. They saw their name, the logo, the company name, that was it. And I said, that's not what people see when they come off the elevator. They see your receptionist, they see your front desk, they see the layout of the place, they see a whole lot of stuff. They see all of this. And your name is just something on the wall behind that. And that's the reason you're not understanding. The first face that people see when they enter your environment is critical. And I'm not talking about face just the person. Do they see themselves, a person that looks just like them? But I said the face. What do they see? If you're holding an event in a place that people are very uncomfortable to attend, they're not coming, because the first thing they see is they pull up in the parking lot and says, whoa, I don't feel good here. If there's one group we were talking to, they were talking about the fact that they did theirs at lunch, and their group grew when they changed the location that they had the lunch in. And they actually moved to starting their session at a fast food place to where was sort of like a buffet-like place, so people could have different kinds of food. And then they go off to another room. But what was important for them is people could come in, and anybody coming in could feel like they could find something that they wanted to eat and they felt good with. And that was then the start. So the face became the fact that they were in a buffet where good food, where people could find the food they were comfortable with and move forward. And so those things you're saying, Eden, are absolutely important. What do you look like when people come to visit you, even if you're Zoom? Cynthia. Oh, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
You're still on mute. And then
Thank you.
Our support group has some members that are under 70 in age, and they typically have people with Parkinson's that attend. And then we have those in their early 70s where the spouse who does not have, or caregiver who does not have Parkinson's attends. And these are both African-American and Caucasian. How do we get usually it's the men that aren't attending. How do we get them in? And do we approach it differently for the two groups?
So do you have a group that you have visited where those men are, where they're already congregating?
Yes, a different group. And they congregate because they're all going to Rocksteady Boxing. So they're brothers.
So I would visit the group in several visits, maybe 4 or 5. And sort of, once they've seen you a few times, to say, why do you come here? I mean, because you'll see them talking to each other, and what's going on here that makes this the place you want to congregate, and they'll tell you, okay. And it may just be, especially, I'll speak for the guys in the room, but for the minority in the room, I'll speak for the guys. So here's a subtlety you might not pick up. If I went to a support group that was full of beautiful women, I would be very nervous. Because I'm married and I've been married for 45 years, 46 years, and I want to stay that way. Okay. So I'm not saying that's all their reasons, but guys we don't just go to, when you say a mixed group, when guys walk in the room in a mixed group, most of us don't think that it's a mixed group. We just go, oh my God, there's women here. Okay. What is that gonna do? It's a guy thing. Okay. So we're much more comfortable when we go in the locker room because there's nobody in there but us. Okay. If we go to the basketball court or the golf thing, nobody there but us. And we can feel relaxed and we're not going to say something wrong. We're not going to do anything. So sometimes it's just simple things like that. It may not be that, and by the way, Denise mentioned this, every support group isn't for everybody. So it might be that you don't want to make changes in your support group to necessarily bring in a certain group of men, okay? But if it's positive and there's stuff for them to gain by adding value, by the way, it's an important point, they add value, okay? And if they feel like they're adding value, they'll come. They'll help and they'll raise their hand eventually and say what the challenges are, etc. So let's, that
Linda-
answer that, Cynthia?
Well, first, because I do see Monica, but
Yeah, I wanna
Linda,
get
Paul,
Monica.
and Nina both came off mute, so I wasn't sure if they had questions.
Monica?
Well, Nina or Linda, did you guys have questions? Because you both came off mute.
I just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
I just had a comment, but so I'm with Power for Parkinson's in Austin, Texas. And first of all, I just want to thank you, Bernard and Denise, for this great talk. And it's extremely relevant to what we're doing or trying to do in Austin, because we offer free exercise classes at 8 locations in the Austin area. We've been doing it for 10 years and we've had a lot of trouble reaching more underserved communities. We've tried offering classes in different locations, and some of the things you mentioned, talking to ministers at different churches, which has been unsuccessful.
Right.
So we started something new. So in addition to our exercise classes, we also have support groups with a new relationship with the School of Social Work at UT, which has been fabulous. We've separated, in the support group meets with one group with women, one group with men with Parkinson's, and then one group of caregivers. And that's been very successful for the last 4 or 5 months. But we are still missing a large population, despite us having a lot of people with Parkinson's. We've talked to neurologists, we've talked to all kinds of people. We don't get the people we know that are here in Austin, that the Hispanic community, the Asian community, the Black community. So we now have 3 interns, and a lot of my team is on today to hear this, because we started a new project and where we're working to possibly develop something that might become a community ambassador program along the lines of what you're suggesting, although we're still just trying to figure out what that method would be, is how to, we're trying to interview people from different communities, some of these leaders, and then try to expand from there. So we're all excited about that project, and a lot of information you shared is just fantastic. And I think it's a big need within the Parkinson's community.
I think that's a great way to work with ambassadors. And sometimes when you're working with different cultures, the best way to engage them is go where they are, but have a meal or have a snack, because a lot more is discussed with families. and they appreciate the food being part of it.
Yeah, I was about to say the challenge with, for example, the Hispanic family is, and just think about your own family. When you all have difficult subjects, where do you take those up? Around the dinner table, okay? And even with extended family, it's around the holiday dinner table. If you are trying to reach a community for whom this disease is a stigma, okay, understand, it's a stigma because there's not enough Parkinson's awareness. So it's still in the stigma stage. You're not gonna be able to just bring people out into the open. So it may be a low-key conversation around a meal that's family, the whole family. And you start slowly working it up, as opposed to, announcing that next month our speaker will be so-and-so and they will talk about DBS, okay? You already got me running out of room. And the month after that, they'll be talking about Parkinson's and constipation and what you can do with gut health. So we can laugh at that now, but that's exactly what goes on in a lot of them. And what I'm saying is that's not very culturally sensitive, okay? And so the results you're getting are exactly, so there's a reason why a lot of Parkinson's groups are dominated by well-educated white men as attendees, because the programs fit the education model, okay? And so that's who's gonna attend. If the programs were translated, I'll use that word carefully, into, and that's what this book is. We built explaining Parkinson's around storytelling. So there's a lot of good technical information about Parkinson's in this book, but it's weaved into and done through storytelling, because in most cultures, people are educated through storytelling. I mean, you spend your time watching TV, you talk about whether it's a good story or not, okay? We do storytelling. So it's amazing when you want to put a PhD candidate up in front, giving a professorial discussion of some aspect of Parkinson's disease, and you wonder why people aren't there. Like,
Yeah.
That's just not culturally sensitive.
Well, it seems like it's such a big undertaking, and we are all hoping that we can maybe educate people about Parkinson's before we even tell them about our program, to sort of go into community centers or, make these contacts. We have to build up the contacts and then try to educate people just about the disease.
For education. I'm going to get Monica in. Thank you for your comments. Let me get Monica in.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, and nice to see you both, and Eden and Clemmy. Last saw you all in DC at the All In, and David. Okay, so I just want to reflect on a few things that came up. First of all, storytelling. I mean, I'm in the South. We're here in Western North Carolina, and I grew up in North Carolina, and it's all about stories, and every human endeavor is about storytelling. We sit around the fire and we tell a story, and hopefully we have some meat to put on the fire and eat too. But it's almost the stories themselves are food. So I think inviting people into a group that's about telling stories to each other is a good way of getting people into the room. And then in terms of guys coming into the room, every guy likes to be kind of helpful. And particularly if you're got a diagnosis of Parkinson's, can you come early? I need help. I need help setting up. I need some help taking things down. I need somebody to do some shopping. Can you go pick this up for me? So feeling useful is a good way, right? Right, Bernard? You like to, if I told you gave you a list to go to the store, right? That would be comfortable, right? And then as far as dance, the secret there, we got to get the word out, but research indicates that any kind of dance is helpful for Parkinson's. It isn't like Dance for PD is a particular program. Any kind of music, any kind of dance is good. And so I have a colleague who leads a kind of Kathakali dance for a group of Indian residents that she works with. And it's just as exciting and just as fun. Anything gets you shaking your booty and meeting the beat is important. And how about having people guest DJ the classes? Have somebody do a mixtape, or have the whole group come together and they each get to choose one song, and that goes on the mixtape for a month, and then they do another one. It's more than just the rhythm or the beat or the speed. It's really the story in the song too, and
Right.
how if you remember that, and so music is a great way of bringing people in the room, and inviting people to be that DJ. And some, you can even get some young kids to come in and DJ every now and then, see if you can keep up.
So Monica, let me say this too. It's about keeping your eye on the prize. Okay, and I just culturally threw something out there. So your ultimate goal is to get your community engaged and moving and help them live a better life in Parkinson's. So if you get hung up over it's not the exact approach you thought it was going to be when you began it, you've lost sight of what the objective was. And you just mentioned it. As long as you get them moving and active, tell all the other people that says, but no, it needs to be they need to be samba dance.
It could be tango, it can be ballroom, it doesn't matter. All the research shows it's all the same.
Right. So it's keeping people from getting locked in their little silos and doing it a particular way. If you're getting the objective of getting the involvement and the engagement, you're winning. Okay, you're winning.
And I think also, if there's different kinds of music, everybody can look silly every now and then, and it better to feel uncomfortable and embarrassed because if you're dancing and not because you have Parkinson's. So, it's like shift the kind of humor and the support from the group onto something other than the diagnosis.
And I have to agree with you. I did rock steady boxing for a long time until the pandemic. And we did all kinds of dance moves. And it was really hilarious if anyone had walked into the room to see everyone supposed to be doing the same thing. It wasn't happening, but we all were laughing and having a great time, and we were moving. And so we enjoyed every moment of it. And I think that's what sometimes we forget about. It's about enjoying what you're doing and making sure that you're moving.
The fun's in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and laughing.
Let me also amplify something that Dan has in it. Dan Novak, he's a colleague of mine on several projects. And I use that word intentionally, Dan. Dan mentions that a lot of times your efforts to do community engagement are projects. And that's part of the problem. That's not going to be successful. This effort of outreach needs to be part of your DNA. You need to be getting out in the community and finding out what's going on out there and elsewhere, etc. It needs to be part of just what you do as part of this process of building up, so that this isn't just a project. You say, okay, let's see if in 6 months we can't have 6 minorities in our support group. No, it needs to be part of how you're running your support group, how you're thinking about it, focusing on the fact that you want to get people moving, improve the community, so that it just stays there and it keeps going. And if 6 months you haven't succeeded, so what? The time frame, realistically, is not 6 months. That's arbitrary. That was thrown up as a project because somebody wants to put a measurement tape on it. Ultimately, your goal is over a significant period of time. You've seen the change, you've grown the group, you've reached people you haven't been able to reach. And so it's more than a project. It's really your DNA. It's what people see when they come in. It's what people feel when they stay. It's much broader and much more foundational than simply a project to get a number of people in the room.
So one of the things that you can look at is when you go into the community to meet with people and with the trusted leader, you ask the questions. Is it good timing? Is this a subject that you want to go after? Do you have time? What are the inconveniences? What are the problems? So that when you're creating something or you're expanding something, you know that you've talked to people in the community and they find it of value, and these are the things that they would have taken care of. Because some people might work, some people might have family, some people may not have transportation. There's so many different things that might come up that when you're planning, you're not aware of it. For instance, a lot of people like 12 o'clock, 12 to 1, a lot of people are working and they may not be able to take off. So those are little things that need to be considered as well. And their changes.
All right, so we got Cynthia and Teresa.
Okay, there's something we tried, and I would like your opinion. We just started this. We had some postcard size information printed up that says, do you know someone with Parkinson's? And then the other side talks about, the support group, the dance group, and a way to contact them. So we're hoping that people will pick it up and say, yeah, my uncle has it, or, and approach them. Do you think that's going to be of any value, or is I know when I was first diagnosed, I didn't want anybody to tell me what to do. So I wonder if people
Remember that thought, because when you're trying to engage new people, they're in exactly that mindset,
Yeah.
So I hesitate to ever criticize the effort, because I'd have to ask you 25 questions first. What's your environment? Where are you? I need to know more about the context and what you're doing it. But here's a thought. How likely was it when you first got your diagnosis and were looking around for a support group or a place to go, that receiving that card would have registered? Look at it that way. How would you have received that? And that's the way I look at the efforts. Try to put yourself in the context of the people you're trying to reach, and then say, does this make sense for that context? Okay. The other thing is, if you had told me we have 10 different versions of the cards, and for example, one of the cards said, did you know anybody with the shakes? Do you know anybody with tremors? Okay, as opposed to saying, did you know anybody with Parkinson's disease? Because I can just tell you, okay, I thought I knew what Parkinson's disease was when we walked out of the office. I thought I knew what Parkinson's disease was a year out. I thought I knew what Parkinson's disease was 2 years out. We're out 5 years since the official diagnosis, and I now know, I still don't know what Parkinson's is. So I've tried not to ask somebody out there whether they have Parkinson's, and now I spend more time talking about symptoms. Do you have these things?
Mhm.
Are these things interfering with your quality of life? Would you like to talk about it in a comfortable environment? We have people like you. This is more important for me, again, if I got something that says, we have people who are, have these kind of conditions, and they're willing to share because they struggle and they're willing to share. And that sounds a little bit different to me than, do you have Parkinson's? We got your answer. So is that helpful, Cynthia?
Yes, very much.
Right. So I was looking at the chat and about the music. There was a suggestion in the chat, just to ask, can people submit what their favorite songs are?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wanted to comment on something that I've experienced with my husband of 50 years. We've been married 50 years. So,
congratulations.
yeah, thank you. I had asked him if he would be interested in a support group for partners. He immediately said no. However, he's very interactive when I go to the doctor, or when I go to a PD conference or whatever. Always wants to be there. So I got to thinking, why doesn't he think he needs any support? Aha, right. So, of course, knowing my husband as I do, I realize he doesn't want to be perceived as being weak, which the term support means. If you need support, it's like you need a cane to hold you up, or, and I think that's what he perceived. He said, no, I don't need a support group. And I wondered, well, what other word could I use to get him engaged in such a process? Because it's the process, not the name of it.
Excellent.
So I came up with some, power and support. He needs to give the support, not receive the support. And he needs to be informative, not to get information. So, I mean, that's being a professional man, that's his character.
I would have asked him this way, because I actually have done this now. Okay. We now get calls from people who say, my spouse won't do this or won't do that, whatever. So here's exactly how I would have approached your husband. You've been doing this for 50 years. You've been wonderful. I couldn't have asked for a better partner. Would you be willing to share some of your expertise, how well you've done this with other people? I never mentioned all those other things that you said. Okay?
Right.
They could use your help, because if someone mentioned, guys like to help, they like to do things. I would have asked them that. And then, as my wife has done to me a few times, I'd have got him in before he knew he was signed up for it. Okay.
That's the secret power.
That's exactly how. And by the way, so what we're talking about, to those who are listening in, is we did this in a gender sensitive way.
Okay. Yes. And actually, I've only had Parkinson's when I was diagnosed less than 2 years ago. But
then you've had it for 12.
Right, definitely. I was going to say, I know I've had the symptoms as I look back. The first time I started reporting these symptoms, they were all individual symptoms I was reporting to my doctors, not a collective group of symptoms. And once I look back, then it becomes a common thread, Parkinson's. So I was actually the one that asked my doctor to refer me to a neurologist, because I suspected I had Parkinson's. But all that's to say, my husband, I think, was resistant. So you had commented early how to reach out to African-American men. I think it's important to understand the psyche of a man, particularly an African-American man, that they don't want to be perceived as needing support. So to call your group a support group, I think will immediately turn them off.
We love that. Our colleague who runs the support group for Black males, they do not call themselves support group. They call themselves the Kingsmen. Which
Okay.
has biblical implications. It's open and they're Kingsmen. Okay. They do not refer to themselves as a support group.
There you go. I think that's very important.
And thank you for that, because we're hearing that, by the way, in our travels around and talking about this now. You're not the first person to raise the issue that the term support group may be part of the challenge in many of the regions. That, well, just like mental health, we're entering a new phase in America where seeing a therapist is no longer, the death sentence. For everything around you, the job, the whatever, but not everybody's there yet. Okay, so the concept of going to see a therapist, we're still building up to where it is acceptable. So the same thing goes for a support group, because the minute you say support group, I know most of my colleagues, and males in my community, and some of the other ones I'm familiar with, we think you're going to AA. Which means if you tell somebody I'm in a support group, you're a drunkard, you can't handle your liquor, wait, no, I wasn't talking about that, but nobody heard that after they heard the word support group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. And the other thing I was going to comment, the term PD, a lot, we use that in our collective circle. Before I had PD, I did not know what PD was. So, I knew what Parkinson's was. I knew Muhammad Ali and Michael J. Fox and Richard Pryor, I had Parkinson's, et cetera, and more recently, Colin Powell. But to to say to me, oh, do you know someone that has a PD, or your group name is such and such for PD? I wouldn't have gotten that. I wouldn't have caught on to what that meant. So just for those that are out there, spelling out the word Parkinson's to a group of people that do not know necessarily what PD stands for is very important.
That's really good. A lot of people do not like acronyms for that very reason. And so whenever you see mentioning of looking for symptoms, they always spell out the word Parkinson's.
You're gonna laugh at this. This is true. So I was talking to a gentleman whose wife has PD. And after about a half hour, he said, "Oh, you said PD. I thought you were saying ED." And I was trying to figure out how my wife had ED.
Okay.
All right? So shame on me. Oh, God. One thing, Dave, my buddy Dave out here in Sonoma, out in California where we are. Did you want to add anything?
Just showing up early is what I would emphasize, especially for Zoom meetings. There are a few of us that show up early for our Zoom meetings so that newcomers, first time there, they often show up early. They don't know what to expect. They may be confused.
Excellent.
And I don't know if it really relates to the topic here of serving lesser served persons, but I'm telling you, showing up early and being welcoming is the thing I would emphasize.
So true. Make them feel comfortable.
Right. All right, any others before we wrap?
Make sure the space is warm in the winter and cool in the summer.
I suppose I want to get rid of them. No, kidding.
Well, thank you so much. You even stayed late. So thank you, Bernard and Denise, for this wonderful presentation. We did put a few things in the chat. As always, if you want to save your chat, you can click on the little 3 dots and click on Save Chat, because we did put the link for the book that they showed, if you're interested, as well as this will be available online probably tomorrow, if not Friday. So you definitely want to check out, because I know some people were asking about this. They wanted to see it. As always at PMD, we have our tradition, our wave of gratitude. Thanks everybody for participating. Thank you, Denise and Bernard, for sharing yourselves and just being all around awesome.